I've gone ahead and saved my changes as automoney.psd, found inside the 14 levels curves folder. And I think the auto commands are fairly obvious in terms of their purpose, especially when applied to a low-color graphical image like this money right here. However, when we move on to more nuanced digital photographs, which contain more subtle luminance transitions and far more colors, why then the auto commands become a little bit more difficult to predict. So I'm going to show you how they behave with a couple of different digital photographs, but I want you to know this. The auto commands do their best work on two kinds of images, either images that have color casts, and as you know, both the auto tone and the auto color commands will remove color cast from an image, but strictly speaking, you don't need a color cast because if the colors are okay, you can just go ahead and apply the auto contrast command. What you definitely need inside of an image, what the auto commands are designed to do, is correct low contrast images. So notice that I've got my control layer selected inside of automoney.psd. And you can see here, this is the original version of the money. And you can see that we're missing shadow detail and we're also missing a little highlight detail. And as a result, the entire histogram is squished. It doesn't take up the entire horizontal space provided by the graph. And as a result, what we have is a low contrast image. The auto commands will go in and stretch those histograms, thereby liberating the contrast inside of an image. Let me give you a couple of other examples here. I've got this image called washed out and badly cast.psd, also found inside that 14 levels curves folder. It comes to us from PhotoCD, which is a group that works with the Fotolia image library, about which you can learn more at fotolia.com/geek. Now, when you look at this image, the first thing you see is a reddish color cast. But it's not nearly as much of a pronounced color cast as you might think, because she naturally has ruddy skin tones, and she also has red hair, and she's wearing a red sweater, so she's already naturally trending toward red. Her biggest problem is that she lacks shadows. So you can see here inside the histogram panel that all of our histograms are bunched up to the right, meaning that we've got plenty of highlight detail to work with here, but we're missing shadows. That's another kind of low contrast image because once again, the histogram is squished and it's relying on the auto commands to liberate it. All right, I'll switch to my last image, which is La Pyramide.psd. And this is an image that I shot in the Saint-Rémy area of southern France. And I'll go ahead and hide the histogram panel for a moment so that you can see the entire width of the image. Notice it's got this really cool sundial here that provides us with a little bit of a puzzle in terms of its numbering system. Anyway, I'll let you investigate that on your own if you're interested. I'll bring back the histogram panel and notice this time that we're lacking highlights. So all of our histograms are bunched up to the left-hand side. Plenty of shadows. Well, we could use actually a little more shadow detail, but we really need more highlights. So once again, the histogram is squished, needs to be liberated. That's the whole purpose of the auto command. So what I'm going to do here inside of this exercise, I'm going to go ahead and apply each one of the auto commands to both of these images, and we'll just see what happens. And then in the next exercise, I'll take the results of those various auto commands and I'll merge them together to create the ideal correction. So let's switch back to washed out and badly cast here. And what I want you to notice about this is how the shadows are arranged, such as they are, that is to say. So notice that we start with the blue mountain right here, and then the green mountain overlaps, and then quite a distance away, the red sets in. And so as a result, our shadows are looking quite red because red is the brightest channel where the shadows are concerned. And that's where the real color cast is creeping into this image. Notice also that we have only red highlights. Where the highlights are concerned, the green and blue channels are underrepresented. All right, so let's see how the various commands fare. I'll go ahead and click on the auto tone layer, turn it on as well so that we can see it. Notice the image still looks the same because, after all, this is just a copy of the background layer. And then I'll go up to the image menu and choose the auto tone command, which is going to stretch each one of those histograms outward. Notice that the shadows continue to be offset from each other. That's very important because we'll see how that differs from auto color in just a moment. Now, the command has done a brilliant job of compensating for the color cast. In fact, it's probably gone a little bit too far again. So we have some bluishness inside the skin. Also, we have tons of shadows now. In fact, I would say this image is a little bit too dark. All right, let's switch over to auto contrast, turn it on. Now, you would figure auto contrast isn't going to work too well with this image because, after all, we have this very pronounced red color cast. But think again, go up to the image menu and choose auto contrast. And it actually looks halfway decent because the fact of the matter is the color cast isn't as pronounced as you might think. All right, but probably so far we need to blend between these two corrections before we're going to come up with the right result. Anyway, I'm going to click on auto color this time, turn it on, and then I'll go up to the image menu and I'll choose the auto color command. Now, normally this command stands the best chance of succeeding because it goes in there and it tries to neutralize the highlights and the shadows and the midtones and so on. In the case of this image, though, it fares quite poorly. It makes the skin tones bluer than ever, and we're actually starting to lose the redness inside of the sweater a little bit. And the reason is, notice what it did to these masses of shadows right there. It went ahead and tried to align them with each other. And that does, strictly speaking, make for some neutral shadows, but in doing so, it's moved a lot of the other luminance levels around, and that's not ultimately suiting the image that well. But as you'll see in the next exercise, I'm going to actually employ all three of these adjustments in order to create the ideal correction. All right, let's switch over to laparameter.psd once again. Click on Auto Tone, turn it on as well. Go up to the image menu and choose the auto tone command, and we end up getting this correction right there, which is a little blanched, and we're warming up the image, I think, a little bit too much. Notice it's getting a little bit yellow here. Once again, all the command has done is stretched out each one of those color channels independently. So bear in mind, every time you apply any one of the auto commands to a different image, you're going to get a custom result. All right, now I'll switch over to auto contrast, turn it on as well. And then I'll go up to the image menu and I'll choose the auto contrast command, which is pretty darn successful. And not surprisingly, given the fact that this image doesn't have much of a color cast in the first place. All right, now let's switch over to auto color, turn it on, and then I'll go up to the image menu and choose the auto color command. And this time, auto color fails brilliantly. This is a terrible correction. In fact, this could be the before image before we get around to correcting it. It looks like it's been sitting in a picture frame in direct light for the last 20 years, and it's faded terribly. So obviously, auto color is not the champ this time around. In fact, nobody is quite doing everything exactly right, which is why we're going to go ahead and merge the results of the auto commands in the next exercise.